Today is April 23rd, 2019. We are gathered here. It is 12:07 for a pre-council workshop on our agenda, item 1.1, fiscal year 2019-2020 budget workshop, discussion only. Thanks everybody for coming together during the noon lunch hour. David?
Yes. Hello.
Hello.
So we'll continue on as we did yesterday with departmental discussions, and we'll start off with Mike Hutz with Parks. Come on down.
Hi, Mike.
We have a few more today than we did before. Oh, and the other thing I have to note is I got to step out at 1 o'clock for another meeting for a few minutes to deal with an issue. Rachel will take over driving at that point, and I'll come back as soon as I can.
Okay.
So just as a bit of background, there's 7 of us in our department, plus myself. We're responsible for the mowing and the sweeping of all the large 5 parks. We have multiple pocket parks as well as the trail system which runs all the way through town out to Lions Park. We're also responsible for the Christmas lighting on Main Street, the banners, and alike. As far as upcoming projects, I just got an email this morning. Next Tuesday or Wednesday, they're going to start on construction of the new playground at Old City Park.
Oh boy.
So the old stuff is out of there, and the area's been ready for those guys to come in next week and put that new stuff in. So we're also in the planning stages with engineering of the refurbishment or redesign of the pond area at Old City Park. I just got a phone call this morning from the DNR. They've had a monitor in the pond for the last 12 months or so, taking water temperatures to see if it's suitable for stocking of any type. So as soon as I get some information from him, I'll have more of an idea of what we're going to do moving forward. So,
and the pond is an area that we're going to have to focus on as we go forward. Its banking is so steep that you can't not have a fence. If a child fell into it, I don't think they could get out of it. And then also the pond is leaking as well. The fence is failing. It's starting to fall into the pond area. So it is an area going forward over the next 5 years or so, or 2 years or so, we're going to have to really look at and draw up a plan on how we want to fix the pond, stop the leakage, and figure out a different way to make it accessible where it's fenced off, but it's not chain link fenced off. Maybe a boardwalk with a 5-foot guardrail around the edge so you can walk up to it. You could feed the ducks and interact with the pond, but at the same time, it would still be a barrier preventing people from being able to get into that area. So there's some concrete work that needs fixed over there as well. So it, with the new playground going in though, it's going to be an area of focus. It's one of the neater parks in my opinion. It's not very Moabish. It almost belongs, it has lots of pine trees, and it almost has a northern, like Logan vibe to it. So it's kind of a cool little place to go hang out. That's.
And what about the stage?
The stage
is completed. That was redone last year.
We would like to look at adding a little bit of area off the backside of the stage where the pumping and the equipment for the pond right now is outside, and it's kind of down in the dirt, just out exposed to the elements. So some of the stage area off the backside would see a little bit of work, but it wouldn't be for the stage as much as it would be for the pond system.
Yeah, I think if we're going to go ahead and redevelop the pond area, then we incorporate a proper pump house and an area to be drawing the water from, rather than just drawing out of the bottom of the pond, which is what we're doing now. We suck up all sorts of junk. So,
yeah.
It would be better for everything if we can have a proper concrete area to pull water from.
And Parks is responsible for the waterfowl that lives in the pond. They feed them every day and take care of all that.
We also have an extra crew member on board this year, so we're 7 days a week, 8 hours a day, through weekends, holidays. Our main area of focus there is bathrooms, because of the increased traffic, specifically at Lions Park. If you can only get there in the morning, it's not acceptable with the amount of traffic that comes through there. So we've got him rotating back through there again during the day as well to make sure it's stocked and make sure there's not any things in there that shouldn't be in there. So
Yeah, Lions Park creates a different set of challenges than the other parks. It's right at the mouth of the canyon. As everyone comes down from camping, they tend to stop and dump all their garbage, and it's a different.
Get their water needs met.
Yep, they pack all their garbage out of the canyon when they're camping along the river, but it is the first dumpster they see when they get back to civilization, so we tend to haul a lot of waste out of there. We actually were there this morning looking at some of those issues and gonna address it we're gonna add an additional dumpster there, so.
So I think as far as my budget goes, generally, we're not a whole lot off from where we were last year. I think the only two things that on there that I requested were a couple of pieces of machinery. One was a new dump truck to replace one of our ailing members of the fleet, and also a lift truck, a bucket truck, to replace one which is in excess of 25 years old. So.
And parks also, when they do the lighting every year, they put the lights on the county building as well. I don't know if that's well known, but they actually do all the Christmas lighting and decorations out in front of the county building down here on Center as well.
So the budget looks like it reflects the additional position that was created last year, or is that different?
No, it
I thought
does.
we created that position during budget season.
You did, you created it during the budget amendment.
Oh, got it, okay.
And then it got folded into
Okay.
the overall.
And so that's what the increase is, and then that's 6 full-time,
7 full-time plus myself.
sorry,
So
8 full-time
8 full-time.
parks. Got it.
So Mike, going back to Old City Park for a moment, you talked about pumping.
Mhm.
That pond is not, I had the idea somehow it was originally fed way back when by a spring? and
Yeah,
then it just
it's
overflowed.
spring fed. There's 2, Levi might be able to help me out. There's at least 2, maybe 3
3.
springs that feed that pond.
Mm.
So, yeah, that's,
The pumping is for watering, and then we water out of that pond a little bit, so we pump water out of it to
Okay.
use it. And then also, in case that we have to control the level of it, or if we have to drain it. So that's where the pumping aspect of it comes in.
yeah, all our irrigation is out of the pond.
Yeah. You say it leaks, so the seepage is well known then?
Yeah, specifically in the wintertime where the level gets higher, then during the summer I pump it down to a level where it's not so much of an issue, but in the wintertime, yeah, it leaks out through the grass. So,
It's interesting because I've been doing county meetings and Ken's Lake leaks. I'm wondering if it's the same sort of soil, but I'm digressing now, but leakage has gotten to be interesting, let's put it that way, into the groundwater.
Leakage.
Yeah,
You
thank
guys get rid of those evil geese? Or are they still there?
they're still
The
there.
evil geese.
Oh,
They're still there. And,
Yeah.
one took a piece out of me the other day. So
We get a lot of freeloaders in the winter.
yeah, that's true.
Well, I mean, if we open that up, are the geese gonna stay? Or is there a relocation program?
That's an issue we would have to cross when we got there, and it would just depend on how we made the barrier around the pond. I mean, obviously, if we stick to similar to what we have now, it's a non-issue. If you create a barrier where other animals can't get to the waterfowl, they would remain. But if we create a structure where dogs or wild animals could get down into the pond area, then,
Or small children?
Then it'd be a buffet.
yeah, we will not make it so children. You would have to redo the entire pond
To lay it back.
to lay to do the banks to where they have a grade to them to allow people to be able to ever access it. Like whatever
Yeah.
we build will completely prevent any human access into the pond. Now, you might be able to walk over it now and look into it, but that would be the extent of it.
Put a boardwalk and some fishing poles and some
Yeah.
guitar strumming and
It's
whatever.
staged, yeah.
Sounds pretty good.
Just out of curiosity.
What? Thank you. Jeff.
They heard there were geese.
Also provided the best moment at yesterday's meeting when his phone went off and was Highway to Hell, just as he was going to talk about streets. So
I know
good.
Danish Flats
Thank
out
you,
there, when
Jeff.
I was on the county, they've got netting over a lot of their settling ponds. So you could buy some heavily oil contaminated netting that you could put over Old City Park for a lot cheaper, but it probably wouldn't be as, I'm just kidding. Don't get excited.
Just out of curiosity, is that something you keep in the back of your minds for just long-term for potential grant funding that might come up for Parks and Rec to actually, I mean, if we ever did find money, would it be possible to potentially regrade and make it less steep and,
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we met out there
Oh,
a couple
yes.
weeks ago, and Mike is starting to really draw up an idea of or looking at some ideas as to what we want to do. We have the engineering contracts out where we're going to have additional engineering help, and we're going to have a couple different things drawn up to present to you guys at some point as to different options and costs and how that will.
I also had some communication with Rosemary yesterday about we're in line for some funding there as well.
Yeah, do you want to speak to that real quick? Can you come up to the mic?
So yeah, a couple of months ago, we put in for a state grant, the outdoor grant, and it's to aerate the pond and put some solar there and fix the sidewalk and the roof. And so we're still in the running for it because they asked us to make some corrections.
And is that reflected in the budget, that if we get the grant, we can spend that money?
Not in this budget, no, because obviously it's money we don't have yet, so we're not spending money we don't have.
Okay.
So none of the things we're talking about are in this budget, they're just what things that Parks is in the future, where their expenditures are going to be as we go forward.
Rosemary, do you know what the timing is to hear about that?
They said early summer, so probably not till June. Oh, the other thing is, what was it? Get rid of some of the invasives. And actually, a earth vessel is in that grant too.
So
Composting.
we would probably do a budget amendment if we needed to, if we got that.
That would
Yeah, I
be
think it
great.
was-
It'd be an exciting amendment,
What was it? I think it was 50,000.
if the time was budgeted too for
Did you
it.
say 50 or 15?
50.
Oh, wow. That was great.
And so solar would then go on the stage roof and then operate the pump and the electricity?
Pump?
Probably not the pump.
Or another pump?
The pump is pretty energy intensive, but we could use it for the lighting. I mean, we have lights.
The stage
Like-
has power, has outlets, and
Yeah.
Does the stage have lights mounted? Oh,
has power as well for plugging in apps.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have
like
like that.
stage lights or just like a light?
Yeah.
Floodlights that come down.
Floodlights, yeah.
Could this
Yeah.
panel be another one of your net metered panels, Rosemary, like you were talking about?
Yeah.
So they just basically pump it into
Yeah.
the grid, they get paid for it,
Yeah.
and then he runs the pump whenever he needs to, so.
So
Sorry.
back to the, thanks Rosemary, back to the budget. Does this council have any questions about the items that are here, admin or otherwise?
I looked and it looked pretty straightforward. I just, budget-wise for all departments, needed a reminder about recycling. Did we used to just have one line item for Brad and then now we've split it out? Or was it always split out? That's what I couldn't remember. I think it's good that it's split out, but yeah.
I think we had a kind of a mix,
Yeah.
like some
Oh, okay.
departments, it was a little bit of a mix. So we're trying to be much more specific about
Yeah.
the parks version,
Yeah, that seems helpful because
responsibilities.
especially I would think the parks get, have a lot of bins and get hit pretty hard, on
Yeah.
that front.
It's been a challenge, to put it mildly. So we've had Parks, Mike himself, have had to go get contaminated cans and take them down to Public Works and dump them out on tarps and resort them. And it's been a challenge to get the recycling going in the public areas.
Yeah, I was gonna just ask about that. Mike, how is it so far, since we're midway in the season?
In my opinion, so far, I don't really think it's working right now, to be honest with you. I think we get way too much contamination right now. For the homeowner, it's fine because they're already, but for in a public setting like that, it's just, in my opinion, you're supplying an extra trash can right now.
Right.
I also understand the other side of it, but the city's got to be seen to be doing the right thing, but that's my opinion.
Yeah.
And we've tried some different scenarios in different places. We've found that the trash can next to the recycling bin tends to work best. So we've recalibrated some of the parks and are going all of them into that direction, and we'll keep working at it to try and get a better mix.
Well, and note that as the budget sits right now in the capital fund, and we'll talk about it in more detail when we get there, but we do have an amount in there that is for recycling bins and signage to try to make that a much more robust, better, try to figure out what's the best way to do signage and do the bins themselves so that we do.
Yeah, I think David hit
Reduce
the nail on the head. A lot of the problem is the cans are so similar. And so we met with Dan a couple weeks ago, and we have ordered more signage that we can stick on the sides of the cans as well. So
Yeah, that's been done, and I think it's just a matter of finding the right mix and, moving things around to suit.
Do you, just since we're talking trash, but it seems like an issue is the fact of the coloring of the cans themselves. I mean, internationally, recycling cans are blue, and we have an international tourist base that comes here. I mean, and it seems very problematic that we're using brown cans.
Rosemary, can you speak to that? We've had those conversations internally as well.
Well, I think one of the things is we just need to sign it and have a campaign. So we were going to do the yellow lid campaign when Dan hires his outreach coordinator, which is supposed to happen in the next 2 weeks. So I think, public containers are always the toughest.
Yeah.
I think, Karen, I think that's right on, because the lid's yellow and the postage is on the lid as well. So if the wind's blowing and the lids are blowing back, they're identical.
You got a trash can.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's why, internationally they're blue everywhere else.
Green
So I
Solutions
think-
also cut a circle.
We did that.
You did that on the
Yeah,
recycling bins?
found-
Yeah, that's good.
It was, the birds were causing us. just
Oh,
as
yeah.
much-
And didn't they
messes as they
clamp them or lock them or something?
Mhm.
Might have been fascinating.
So we are going to get more signage for the sides, just to try and make them stick out a little more.
And I think the best signs are the ones that are like Waste Watchers. They go like this, so you can see them. So all the research says pictures and ones that are are
Vertical.
vertical.
All right, enough with that. Thank you all. Mike, thank you so much for keeping all of our parks so beautiful and so accessible. They really look amazing. Thank you so much.
Like you got one of those jobs that nobody knows you're there until you're not there.
Thank you.
Oh, hey, Mike, quickly, how difficult is it to turn the sprinklers off for one day? Would that be a possibility?
Yeah, it's really, when do you want them off?
Maybe July 4th?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Everyone can run through the sprinklers on the light.
We're just really trying to make the 4th of July happen. Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you for that flexibility that
Yes, thank you.
probably are hit with more often than others. Real quick, timekeeping wise, who else do we have today so that I can just make sure that we hit everybody?
We've got wastewater, so that's both the collections and treatment,
Okay.
the Obi and Greg show, and then we're doing culinary water with Levi, and then police with Chief, and then stormwater as well, but that one I will do. So that's really
Okay, so we've got 4 more, and is the intention that we're out by 1?
Did you? Up to you all.
We can be done by 1 easily, but the police folks, they can talk forever.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, let's at least try to finish with water by 1,
Great.
if not sooner. Okay, wastewater.
Okay.
There you are. There you are. Joel, do you want to sit with them, or do you want to sit here on the edge?
There you go.
Why don't we do that?
There's twos. That way we're not jumping around.
Obi Tejada, collections.
Well, I'll start with the WRF, as you all know, it's brand new.
Greg, you speak into the mic.
Yeah, put it right in front of you. Thank you.
As you all know, the WRF is new, so we really have to go through a year of operating the plant so that we can learn from the transitions as the seasons change. And so hopefully in the next year, we can apply these things that we learn, as there have been transitions through the winter months here. Coming back into spring, it was a little struggle because it's been a long, kind of cool winter, really, so the water temperatures are not coming up fast. We're not noticing that the population of bugs, as they call them, are coming along as fast as they would ordinarily do this time of year, but we've had no violations whatsoever, even close. The plant is doing far better than it was spec'd out to do. We have 3 employees down there. That's more than adequate to run the plant with, so we will need no help down there. And later on in the budget, I would like to address something that David has put in that could help us save some money too, so I'll let Opie speak.
Real quick, just going back to you, can we pull up, so is that, just so that we're all looking at, so for, okay, so your wages and salaries are you and one other?
Mark and Kent.
And Kent, yeah, okay,
3 of us.
okay.
Budgetarily, for me, it's pretty much the same as last year. There's 3 of us, myself and 2 others.
And another thing we've done recently is we've relocated sewer collections, Obi and his crew, down to the new building, the WRF. So before they had been up in the old Public Works building, but it was extremely crowded. And so with the new building, and there was enough space to move Obi and his guys down there, and we moved them and their equipment. So they've actually relocated and are located in the new building as well.
And does that logistically work to be there instead of Public Works?
Yeah, I like it a lot better.
It works a lot better for them. It gives them space where they have access to a washing machine, washer and dryer, also lockers and shower facilities.
Oh.
And so if they have
If
any
they
kind
get
of
into
contamination during the day, they can shower in that before they go home. So
That's really great.
The ability to have 2 more referees.
So what is the difference? I mean, the actual was 97.
Oh, that was an actual to date, but maybe a month or 2 ago. And so it's not an accurate number, I wouldn't.
Gotcha.
I think it was hidden at
Nothing to see
yesterday's budget meeting. I
That's
think you
salary,
might have-
so we haven't had like a full staff like for an entire year since I've been there. So those are always pretty low, the actual.
it's the discussion we had yesterday where we budget in the budget to include all possible salary payouts and benefits. And so they're always lower than the actual, or the actual is always lower than the budgeted.
But the budget's lower than the requests. That made much sense.
Frequently.
Yeah.
And we make adjustments as we go along. I make my call, so we talk, I make my call on what I think should go in, and then occasionally I'll get feedback from the departments who are like, well, I know you took that out, but I really want that in. And then we talk about it and figure out if that's what happens, and usually I put it back in.
So we are faced tonight with the discussion around no longer having the requirement that the city do connection and going back to where private vendors with new construction or new impacts do that work to the line, right? So is there going to be a difference in the budget based on that decision?
In terms of revenue coming in?
I mean, but it's revenue neutral.
No,
'cause
not
we're
revenue,
charging for-
expense.
Oh, in terms of expense?
The only place it could save would just be in supplies that we're not having to purchase to install those laterals to the connection point.
which is going to be eaten up in other things we're doing.
Yeah.
I don't think that we're going to see a difference.
I mean, you could argue that it's a benefit, right, in the sense that it opens up that staff time.
100%.
Yeah.
It's a
That's
huge
exactly what it is,
benefit.
yeah.
It's a huge benefit because not only does it take staff time to install it, but it takes admin time to track it, bill it, collect it, and it's always on the back end of a project. And so it's always a problem. People are upset about it every time because it comes at the very end when they're ready to be done. So,
There's pricing and then there's process.
Yeah.
So there's two different things that we're talking about at tonight's meeting. And so I was just talking about if the process changes and we're doing, I mean, how much time do you think you're spending doing those connections?
I'd say probably 6 weeks a year, maybe. Probably 6 connections, something like that, 6 to 8.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah, that's not a lot. I mean, the reason to get out of it is we don't own the line, so there's liability in us laying lines we don't own.
and the problems they cause on the back end. No,
There's a lot of back-end problems with us laying the line.
the method we're going to is standard for the industry.
6 weeks out of,
Nobody's upset about us potentially looking at doing this.
Well, I don't know that there's no one that's upset because everything we do upsets someone, but
I'm
just saying
I can't imagine we're gonna get,
it's industry standard that the contractor and the builder build to the line.
Yeah.
This is the only place I've ever actually worked where we build out. So,
One thing I should add is the plant is still not commissioned to the city, so we still do not physically own the plant. I've talked to David and Joel about this. We do have some minor issues down there yet that the contractors and engineers are responsible for, and we've given them our punch list. So until that punch list is complete, we don't want to own the plant because they are responsible for that plant to be 100% operational with no problems before we take it over.
So once you pay them, you lose your leverage with them, basically? Is that-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once we commission that plant, we own it, we own the expense. So, and granted, all of the equipment is under warranty, but those warranties do run out too. So we want to make sure everything is perfect before we let them, give us the plant.
So Greg, I got a long-term budget for you. Chuck and I were talking the other day, and the number of people being billed out in San Juan County has become a hot political topic with huge numbers being floated and the realities being something different. But Chuck kind of gave me the idea that the impact fees that pay off the bond for the WRF might well depend to some extent on that build out in San Juan County actually happening down the road, so you can collect those impact fees to pay off the bond. Is that much true, or?
Yes, that is true. I live in San Juan County, so I have an easement with Jones and DeMille, the engineering firm that's in charge of that project. And they've already came through my property, and they are giving very good deals if you're close enough to the trunk line. That money will come back in some way, shape, or form on usage on the plant. And San Juan County will be involved in that. I believe that is why they formed the Grand San Juan Special Service District, is because it does include parts of San Juan County.
Yeah.
And so usage fee on the plant would be absorbed through that agency that was created. So we will recognize revenue from that.
we will, but I want to make it clear, though, that it's somewhat speculative, right? And if that revenue didn't materialize, then revenue would be found other ways, namely through probably rate hikes for those who are users. So one way or the other, So I guess I would be a little cautious about saying we're depending on the San Juan County build out to pay for the plant. I don't know that that's fair to say, as much as it's an expected revenue source, one of a few.
Okay. All right, thank you. Sure.
When you do the connection, then is the city still gonna do the streets? I mean, maybe this was a question. Do the patch, or is that gonna be on the,
I would assume that'd be all on
Contractor.
the contractor.
so then you'll just get the call to come and do the connection essentially, and that's it?
I'll put the hole in the pipe,
the
basically.
hot tap, basically.
Yeah, the hot tub.
Because when the private individuals do those connections, they come to me for an construction permit. specified on there that they return all sidewalks, curb and gutter, and roadways to previous conditions.
Yeah. Got it.
Can I ask a question on 56-111, the sewer impact fees? Looks like $350,000, which is great. I just couldn't remember why it makes such a big jump.
Well, the actuals to date back when we did the actuals are actually higher than that. And we just, I think, budgeted very conservatively last year, not really knowing what they would be, but then a couple big hotels came on and
That makes
some
sense.
stuff
Okay.
out in Spanish Valley as well. So just based on last year and what, we think is going to be coming on at this point for this year, put that number at 350.
Okay.
And
Yep.
something to note about the impact fees, those are just for the wastewater plant. Those don't go to collections at all.
Yeah, the impact fees, there's a separate one for the facility itself that treats the wastewater, and then there could be one for collections for the lines, and we're currently,
Could have been. I mean,
Yeah,
we're pretty
currently
built
the-
out.
Well, let's make sure, I thought we changed that a couple years ago.
Get him a mic.
Well, yeah, just for clarity, the impact fees have a component primarily for the treatment, but there's also a collections component to it as well. That whole impact fee analysis that we went through is broken up that way. And Grand Water and Sewer Agency, they pay it that way, as well as our residents, our businesses. And then if San Juan comes on board, they'll do it the same way. Through
Can you
there.
tell me, Chuck, you're expecting a $350,000 check from them before?
The number from San Juan County is about 320,000
paid up front.
paid up front, yeah, for their 240 ERUs.
That's reflected here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the council regarding outflow?
I had a question on utilities, 60027. So there was the note there, includes monument waste charges for hauling grit and sludge. Is that up because of more volume or, tipping fees for that, or I just couldn't remember?
Oh,
That is up because of the electricity usage for the new facility, right, Greg?
On the utilities
Yeah.
account?
And Monument did raise our hauling rates as well for the sludge.
Did they?
Yep.
that's what that
So
would
those
be.
are in two different categories in the budget, correct?
We have,
We have utilities, and then we also have professional and technical services,
right,
which is what Monument Waste falls under.
okay,
Oh, so maybe that note belongs on a different line.
yeah, maybe.
I think our utility guess is gonna be fairly close, based on the current numbers.
Okay, yeah, no, thanks. The line confused me because it had the note about monument waste on the same line, so that makes sense. I got it.
Well, that's a good question, though, because I've been hearing the utilities, like the electric that's going to be used is going to be a lot. So
Yeah,
are
we knew it was going to be more, so that, yeah. that's
Yeah,
what we're
yeah,
looking at.
but like, so we're saying 150.
Yeah, total for the year. Bear in mind, because of winter and the slowdown and the tourists leaving, we have less loading, less flow.
Yeah.
We dropped, the first bill that we got was $13,975. I believe Rosemary, she may have this number, but I think the last one was 7,980. Because I have the ability to drop a blower, which is the most electrical usage piece of equipment in the plant.
Right.
But that blower is back online again because of the loading and the tourists are back and everything. So averaging it out, that 150 is gonna be a very close number.
And
But if we go to if we could, can we do this?
Well, before you do that, though, can we also talk about the one thing that's not really reflected monetarily budget, but when I reported, and I don't know where my notes are, the amount of water that we did spend versus what we are spending is worth recognizing too.
At the old plant, we were using 2 million gallons of water per month, and that was city water. About half was going through the press, that used 75 gallons per minute. and the rest was going through the plant for processing. We've cut that number down to between 20 and 30,000 gallons per month at the new facility. The only thing we are using potable water for at the new facility is for the administration building and the polymer machine. Everything else is reclaimed water, effluent water that has been processed, and we're pumping that back through the plant and using it for processing.
I think that's just worth recognizing.
It's
Thank you.
phenomenal.
It is.
Really is.
Okay, so what's your item?
Okay, under professional and technical fees, David has come up with a rather ingenious idea here.
Eve laughs. What is this?
So excited to
What's happening?
Okay, so because I did some calculations on what it was gonna cost us in the next year to haul sludge, grit, and waste. The total came out to roughly $174,000. David has made a proposal that we possibly buy our own truck and haul our own sludge, which we would only be liable for tipping fees at that point, which we pay anyway out of my budget. And we alleviate the $200 per load that Monument Waste charges us. The truck would probably pay for itself in a little over a year.
What about the labor?
The labor would be a truck, probably, if we bought a 10-ton truck twice a week, I lose a guy for 3 hours.
Do you guys have CDLs?
I do. And
You're gonna, bye, everybody.
So right now, Monument Waste comes 8 times a month, and that comes out to $174,000 a year.
Actually, if you include the tipping fees, which we pay, and then the $200 a load, we average about 6 loads per week, about 6 tons per load. And then you take, well, it's a multiplication formula that I didn't write the whole thing down, but on the original budget, it was, I believe, 174, wasn't it, David? And
That's
we
what it
talked
looks
about
like.
that. And we could cut that with what the numbers David has punched in here. Our tipping fees will not change though, however, because we will still have the same amount of sludge to haul. And so that number is skewed a little bit. But where we would save an awful lot of money is what we're paying them to haul.
Are we
our
contractually,
sludge.
obligated to?
We
for them
have
to haul?
no written agreement with them whatsoever.
No, it's an as-needed basis.
Yep.
So the payback period, if you guys, amortized off the cost of the truck, years down the road and all that, and maintenance and all that kind of usual stuff that's associated with, and it's still a no-brainer, that's what you're telling us, to do what David is suggesting?
Well, that's, Greg's being nice. This was definitely Greg's innovative idea, so.
But out of that 174, how much is in the tipping fees itself?
The tipping fees are $24 per ton, so we're hauling 6 loads a week at 6 tons per load, 36 tons times 52 times 24, which comes out to $62,000 that we are gonna pay.
Gotcha.
At $200 per load, $1,200 per week times 52 is roughly $60,000 we're paying Monument Waste.
So we're saving 112,000, looks like, out of that 174.
We could easily buy a 10-ton truck under government contract, I'm sure, for somewhere in that vicinity. We would have to have Kelly look into that for us.
Maybe the city's auctioning one off. We heard about this last time. You could buy one of your own trucks.
No, I don't want one, no. Listen.
I don't think we'd be
listen,
okay with that either.
I've been stuck at the landfill before. I don't want that to happen again. It's not a nice place.
So that all seems like a great idea. Is that why, because when I was going through here, I noticed that like our monthly fuel, more than doubled. Were we anticipating maybe some more fuel for that, or is that going up for other reasons?
It's 18 miles to the landfill,
Oh, okay.
twice a week.
Okay.
And we're already paying the labor for the individual that's driving the truck. We can afford to give up an employee for 3 hours a day. It's a state-of-the-art plant that runs off a computer.
I can't remember, David, so is that truck built in here somewhere in this budget?
No, it is
Okay.
not, because we had never made a final decision on that, so that would be another capital,
Expense, yeah.
expense.
What, do you have a sense of what that would be?
I have no clue. We'd have to talk to Kelly. He does all the government contracting and acquisitions of equipment.
What's the temperature of the council for this?
I mean, I'd be interested to know what a truck costs, yeah. I think, yeah, this and the other idea we're voting on tonight are both great. Thank you guys for bringing those, yeah.
I'll make a note of that and get back to you.
Great.
On that one.
Well, thanks for bringing it up.
Sorry, last question. So Greg, I remember last year when we were going through the budget, there was discussion of how much we'd charge, like the Park Service for their waste. Did we ever raise the
No.
rates?
Those discussions were supposed to take place. To my knowledge, they didn't. So we're still charging 9 cents a gallon across the board. We are having trouble, however, with the BLM Park Service faults with our new machine. It's plugging up on a regular basis, and so it's costing us a lot of labor there. I think the machine itself is just not capable of handling that. It is so concentrated that it takes quite a while sometimes for them to unload a load, So I hate to say that.
So-
But it's their job to kind of get it up in there, right?
Well, but it's our job to go out there and unplug it, and it's become a nuisance to us. It's very labor intensive to unplug that machine.
So can I make a suggestion? I was open to raising those rates last year, so can we, I don't know what has to happen in order to look at doing that, but it seems this would be appropriate time.
Yeah, it's way past time
Yeah.
we raised rates. I've been there 17 years, it's been 9 cents a gallon ever since.
Are you both okay with that as well? That, okay, great. Thanks, Karen. Thanks, everybody. Well, or just get a big screen. Just put a big screen over it.
I'm not standing in front of that thing.
Your septic,
Catch net.
so
Oh, good times.
There is one other item I'd like to address.
Oh.
Under special department supplies. We have budgeted right now $18,000 for polymer. We use 1 tote a month, $3,000 a tote. So for sure, that number's gonna be $35,000. And right now, it's sitting at 18.
It's at 18? It looks like it's,
Unless I have the wrong sheet.
let's look. So it's, tentative is 35. The request was 41. The budget is 28. Is that right? Am I reading that right?
That's the
now?
bottom line.
Yeah, 28 is, but you're saying it's more like 35.
It's going to be 35 for sure, because we use 1 tote per month at $3,000 a tote.
Okay. Is that, I mean, I guess that's a hard ask.
Yep.
Yeah, so I guess that should be amended to reflect.
Yeah, that's
If we
a
know
given.
that that's a definite.
So it's in there, right? Is everybody reading the same sheet I'm
36.
reading?
wants 35, he's got 35? Is that what I'm reading?
Actually,
Look
the
on this-
number I have is
Well,
18.
So here's your,
Okay.
yeah, great. I thought you were gonna ask for a replacement rake.
Well, actually, is that
you
the
know what?
bottom line of that category?
That is the total of that category. yeah.
Okay, I need $36,000 just for polymer.
Okay,
Well, you know what, we'll work through this, because we just need to figure out exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And maybe not do it in this context,
Oh, okay.
okay?
but like the old plant, remember the rake?
Yeah.
I feel like that needs to be like shadow boxed.
Do you want that in your office?
If anybody's done the tour and you know the rake I'm talking about, if we could shadow box that rake.
We could put it in your office.
Yeah. Like, to thank you all for the work that you've done. So, thank you so much. Yeah, keep the rig.
Golden rake.
Everyone should sign it.
Thanks, guys.
After we wash it. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
Thanks, Obie. Okay, next up is water. Input.
All right.
Hi, Levi, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, speak into the mic. Don't push it away.
Levi Jones, Water Superintendent. We maintain 3 1-million-gallon water tanks, roughly 60 miles of water line. We have 2,200 service connections, monthly meter reading and repairs, 295 hydrants, 400 water valves, multiple springs and wells, and all of us have to achieve and maintain multiple certifications. This year, I look forward to replacing service lines, multiple service lines. We still have a lot of galvanized lines in ground. And as we come across those doing water leaks or just investigations, we replace those as needed. There's a water main on 100 West we're going to disconnect. We going to work throughout the year to get that accomplished. Replace multiple hydrants throughout the year. We have a very detailed preventive maintenance program for hydrants, valve exercising, and spring inspections. We are in the process of changing all of our meters out to the R900i, which is capable of 90-day data logging. Very, very helpful during water leaks or helping a customer review their usage.
And that would be per meter?
Yeah, per meter. Each register is capable of data logging 90 days, which is very awesome. We have a lot of samples to take care of this year. Every 9 years, we have to sample everything. This is one of those years. This is the 9th year. And yeah.
How many
Great.
employees?
What's that?
How many employees do you
5,
have?
including myself.
So Levi, I was telling David that I've been sitting in on GWSSA meetings, and I know Dana's
We're not on the right one.
complained about having to replace a large number of
Are we in the right
culinary
one?
water meters out in their system sooner than they would like. I think that was the impetus, because they spent a pile of money buying new meters. So have you guys run across something similar here to use different kinds of meters or what?
We like to keep a fair amount on hand for, we don't know what year to year, as far as temperature goes, it freezes, water meters freeze. This year was very mild. The freezing temperatures weren't consistent throughout the day, so that helps. We are a long ways away from getting everything to that R900i style meter.
Okay.
We have roughly a quarter of our meters or less on that R900i. And once they are, I'd like to reach, we can get an antenna for City Hall and we can kind of eliminate reading meters. We spent a lot of time verifying usage. The Treasurer's Office will request a meter reading and we'll send a guy out to verify what the usage is. They could do that through an antenna on site in City Hall. So once we get to that point, that's where we want to go.
Can I ask, is that what dingles when you pull the cap up and there's like something hanging from it? Is that what that is? Is it
So-
wireless?
Yeah, that one's the older style. That one has the radio.
Okay.
It's not attached with it. The new ones have the radio attached. It's integrated with the register itself. And so the cost has went up a little bit. Anyways.
But when,
Did I answer your question?
yeah, that helps. I mean, so what I didn't hear you say was the massive replacement of meters that perhaps the county had to go through. I'm not quite sure what the difference is, but I'm glad you haven't had to, let's put it that way.
We like to stay on top of it. It's 100, and I requested, it's in capital projects, 150,000 for meter replacements. It's not near enough what I'd like it to be, but it's a start. So it keeps us busy.
Okay.
So Levi, can I ask what accounts for most of your overtime? Because it's one of the higher ones in a
So we have to maintain wells and springs, and some of that is the treat. We have to, we treat the water daily, and we have to verify that it's being treated daily. We also take meter readings and log that data. We have to report that, all of that information to the state quarterly, annually. Some of the overages this year was the Nelco project on 100 West. That kept us busy throughout the winter. There was a more overtime than we wanted to during that time.
Are we looking to do even more? I mean, the 20 budget shows even 25,000 bucks.
I'm in the negative now, and some of that, we went to an on-call process where we're guaranteed so much time a week, which we weren't prior to, and some of that, we were gonna be just about breaking even, but that Nelco project has kind of threw us over. It kind of fluctuates with your on-call, after hours, water breaks, issues, whatever. But there is, on average in the winter, or excuse me, in the summer, we have a guy on 24/7, 7 days a week. 13 hours a week is what he's guaranteed to get, just from being on call and monitoring those springs and wells. In the summertime, it drops a couple of hours because less is online. So that's what the limit's at.
So Obie's getting a little bit of calm if we pass this change tonight about having us do the connections. Are you going to see that as well?
So how that's going to work for us is we won't excavate our side. Our ownership ends at the meter, the customer side of the meter. And so we want to verify, we're going to tap the water main, we'll install the service line, we'll set the meter yoke and the meter pit. We'll make sure that we'll put an adequate amount of reject sand over the poly line, and then we'll walk away from it and we'll inspect as needed. How that affects us is right now we excavate to the main, do all the excavation, and then we do what I just mentioned. So it'll eliminate the excavation process. Depending on where it's at, we'll have somebody on site to monitor them digging around our water main, and then potentially backfilling our service main as well. So it will eliminate a lot of labor costs for us and equipment usage. The numbers now that we have on our water connections is low. It doesn't cover what we do now. Chuck and I sat down and we went over just on a 3/4 inch line. We're not even breaking even on what we're getting for fees. It's pretty close to the works that we're going to be doing in the future, hopefully. Those costs will cover that, but they don't cover them now. Unfortunately, the city's losing money.
Thanks for describing that.
Sure.
Any other questions? Thank you and your team for bringing water to our people. All right, police. Dun, dun, dun.
Start the theme song, please.
Good luck.
Oh, da na 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 na. Or if it was theme song for the other, da 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 da. Oh.
We have a changing of the guard.
I'm sorry?
We have a changing of the guard because David has to go to another meeting.
Wait, who did we have?
Oh,
after?
like both.
Can I still wear this one?
Emily, who did we have after?
A puck?
Lisa? Was that-
We have stormwater and David will be back for that, he says. Did you have a 1 o'clock?
That's fine.
Do we want to move stormwater to the next go-round, or do we want to do it at the end of police?
We'll see how long this takes.
Yeah.
Our next
That's
meeting's at
up to
5.
them.
We're gonna need you to report out until July. No, just kidding. We're good.
Handouts as well.
Sorry about the song. I can think of another one.
You're gonna see how long
Let me
this
think of it.
so.
Timber. Thank you so much, Jim.
Do you want to start with yours first?
No, right ahead.
What's that feedback?
Is there feedback?
Yeah, it's
What is that over
very
there?
delayed feedback.
Somebody have YouTube on?
Eve, are you watching something over there?
I have YouTube on, but
I have the YouTube feed pulled up.
Let me make sure my sound's muted.
there's some sort of,
Yep.
That's the opportunity for you both to see the back of your heads for just a moment.
Well, let me open it again, sorry.
Are you excited about tonight? I'm excited about tonight.
Yes.
A little nervous, a little excited, a little sad. Mixture of emotions,
Glimpsed, yeah.
a cornucopia.
A veritable panoply,
Wait, what's a panoply?
like a cornucopia, only different.
Oh, like fruit?
There's different food in it.
One deals with Thanksgiving, one doesn't.
Do you want to talk about the revenue side at all, or do you want to go straight to expenses?
Well, not a lot on the revenue side, so I would go to expenses. What I would say is generally, the presentation we provided there, and I'm happy to go into this, I didn't quite frankly know just exactly what to anticipate. The budget recommendation for this year, in essence, is going to be flat, more or less. What has occurred over the course of the 2 years that I've been here is we have maintained in the police department, despite our best efforts, we are maintaining on average a 2 to 2.5 open allocations at any given time. With those open allocations, what we have been attempting to do is to address ongoing needs within the department, utilizing that underexpend. And several of those items will be highlighted in this in the presentation that I have there and in the PowerPoint that I have before you. But what we've done is maintain essentially our lines as is, anticipating two contingencies. One would be coming up to full staffing, at which time we would then, of course, discontinue addressing some of the operational needs, or we would continue to true up with Rachel and David as we move through the year addressing some issues that have arisen. So the bottom line for this particular year is, with the exception of a little bump in animal services, our budget is quite flat. But I'm trying to address individual lines as we go through it. I know I'm jumping from police to animal services. The largest portion of the increase in animal services is a training component, which we're trying to get our code enforcement officers certified, which they have not been in the past, through a kind of a standard certification entity, and that's a little expensive. That's about $10 grand per guy or per individual over the course of that year. We think it would be extremely valuable, but that's a request. So with that said, I'm happy to go through any of the respective lines that may draw your attention, or we can switch to the PowerPoint, whatever you would like to do.
So I got one question for you, Jim, if I may. You guys have talked frequently about hiring new officers and then having to train them and undergoing that expense, only to have them oftentimes leave for greener pastures. Does that still happen, or how does that work?
The change in personnel this year, it does happen. We have lost really 2 individuals throughout the year, one of which was through work action. He was a probationary employee that didn't work out. We terminated his employment before the end of his
probation, and the other was a life circumstance. Individual moved back to where his prior family was. But the answer to your question is what we have almost committed ourselves to doing is to hiring pre-trained officers. The idea of sending individuals to post, that is an individual who is not certified, and sending them up to post for the essentially 3 months and incurring those expenses, that option is for a variety of reasons off the table. Post has changed, Utah Peace Officer Standards and Training has changed the kind of reservation system to put people through that academy, and has made it, in my opinion, so draconian that it's almost unusable for small agencies.
Microphone,
like
sorry.
I apologize.
Brace, I just realized it.
In other words, what Post requires us to do now is to pre-hire an employee, keep that individual on the payroll until an opening comes up in Post, then sending them to them. Again, that becomes, almost a non-starter. We to pay somebody in a civilian capacity or a non-law enforcement capacity for 2 or 3 months, then incur the expenses, they go up there, only to have them potentially not pan out, that does not seem wise. So what we have been doing is recruiting very aggressively pre-certified officers. These are individuals that have already been through the full academy, and then come down and we put them through an FTO, a field training opportunity, and then evaluate them for a year of probation. Still incur some expense, but we don't have that very substantial 3-month period of time where they're out of town and we're paying their wages, training, transportation, per diem, et cetera.
But then you get to mentor them and enculturate them to the Moab scene, and so that's kind of a bonus.
Well, hiring officers in the capacity that we're discussing, where we're hiring them without any police, experience, there is some huge advantages to it. So it isn't out of desire that I don't want to do that. It's just that for so many reasons, it really has become, difficult to do that. But, right now, Utah State University is offering a peace officer certification curriculum. What I'm hoping to do is to find locals, that have been through that course. In fact, we offered 2 individuals employment out of the last class. We didn't get either one of them, but other agencies in the region did. And I think that's a real opportunity. But again, remember, those individuals are incurring the expense for that training themselves through that year-long certification course. Fortunately, we have our officers, Aaron Woodard and Jason Boots and others, participate in the instruction of that course, so they're able to meet these candidates and kind of, we can start working them.
Yeah.
Yeah, early on. So I think that offers a real opportunity, but until the state gets, and I don't want to slam them, I know the realities, but I think Utah Post has really reached a point of saturation where they're just not able to really supply in a reasonable fashion officers to every agency in the state given their resources. That's kind of where we're at with that. But it is frustrating because, getting people with no cop experience is a benefit.
Yeah.
It really is.
Well, it's
a good, you want to have the senior officers with the experience, and you want to have some guys that have, a few years, and then you want to have the new folks. That offers benefits for a department for sure. And when you don't have that striation, when you're all in the upper senior ranks, that has its own set of challenges, and vice versa. And of course, when I first arrived here, we were in a very unusual striation. We had just 1 or 2 with experience, and then we really had the vast majority were very new officers. So I hope that was responsive.
So to qualify for training, if one wants to become a police officer, is a high school education all that's required? Or do you
Yes, sir.
That's
exactly right. High school diploma, citizen, no criminal background, and be able to pass the physical fitness test, which, the entry level is, I would consider it fairly rigorous. We certainly see a lot fail for that reason. I will just mention to you that we are recruiting currently 2 individuals from out of state that are certified officers, but have, expressed a significant interest in Moab, and we've told them time and time again what to expect. But that's another opportunity. People see it as a great outdoor recreation opportunity. So
This is 2 more outside of the 18 that you have?
that's because we're down right now. With my departure and with the shuffling that'll go on, we will be 3 down. We just hired 1 He will come on board, unfortunately, right after car show. We were trying to get him before, but.
Don't
so
scare him off.
He's a local, lived here a long
Oh,
time. He's
so
gonna
he
do a
knows
great
car
job. But in direct to your, we will be down essentially 3. If we can get this gentleman out here in June to test and he gets on board, that's a real opportunity, but that'll put us at that, 2 down again. One allocation we have been in, for lack of a better term, not intentionally, because we haven't had a candidate to put in there, but we have been using some of the underexpend from that one allocation for, if you'll recall, the recruitment and retention bonus that I'm sure there may be questions about. So we've kind of segregated that out. We've been in the fortunate position, we've been in the unique position to not be able to fill it. Therefore, we have been able to use those revenues. But so in essence, for an operational purposes, I would say we are 2 down functionally.
Okay, so how many do we have, 16, 17?
We have 18 allocations.
Yep.
And we will soon be at 15 actual people working.
Okay, and that's with the guy after?
That's right,
Okay.
after car show.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, that's all right.
No, it's fair. Very fair question.
Okay.
Okay.
Brett, what do you think about this budget?
I did have a hand in helping him prepare it. I think it's totally on par. Yeah, it's, as I mentioned, it's essentially flat. And so we're not asking for any significant increases and maintaining. I think it's workable.
Because it's your baby.
It's only workable.
Because how are you feeling about dispatch services?
I'll take a crack at that first, and then Brett can be politically correct. Things have improved, in my opinion. There needs to be additional improvements. And one of the issues that needs to be resolved is the budget, the realities of the true cost of that dispatch. I think that the city should anticipate probably within this fiscal year some communications with Grand County about a sizable increase in the dispatching costs. Right now we pay about $90,000 in a kind of a unique payment approach where we essentially pay for one full-time employee equivalent. But unless there are some modifications in state statutes, which I know the State Sheriff's Association is working on, there will be soon a requirement for all public safety answering points, all dispatch centers that receive 911 calls, to engage in a true costing model. What that means is to take all of the expenses associated just with dispatch and then identify who all is using the services and allocate it out on some proportional model. That is going to be a very dynamic discussion because presently we are the only ones who pay any sizable contribution to that dispatch. To put it in perspective, the Bureau of Land Management, who has recently taken on some dispatch services, they pay $5,000, I think. Right. So the payment schedule is unusual, but
Break that down a little bit further. So we're 90, BLM's 5.
fire is 0.
Fire is 0. Fire's under county. I mean, they collect property tax to cover their costs. And
That's
they're
right.
0. Okay, who else?
Emergency medical services.
They pay what?
0.
0. Okay.
And the county, how much do they?
So the county picks up
The
everything
difference.
else.
And what's
but-
their budget? What's their?
Well, we're trying to understand that right now because right now there is they manage it in a, I won't say unique way, but they utilize some of the services within the dispatch to manage jail operations as well. So the dispatcher, very unique these days, the dispatcher physically sits at a console and manages our calls and is responsive to our other needs, but at the same time is watching the inmates in the jail, opening and closing doors, et cetera.
So if there was a 911 call, but somebody, a prisoner, a high alert kind of person was coming through, getting booked,
It's not an optimal situation for sure.
is there a backup?
I think that the sheriff's office, and again, I want to be a little circumspect here, but this, I think they would use, it would be a Peter to pay Paul situation. They might be able to pull a deputy out off of the jail floor to come in and help the dispatcher. We have even had circumstances where Moab police officers that are familiar with their operations that have gone in there to assist us when we have had a significant communications need. But it is, problematic, to say the least. And so they are struggling with this from a financial standpoint, but I will tell you there is going to be a trickle down of that.
And I
It said
think
90, but this says 75. What's the other 20, 30, 50?
To my recollection, it was between those two numbers. I thought had increased this year to something like 86 or 90, but is it 75 that we direct pay, Rachel?
That's what's included in the budget. I think previously, though, it was higher, and previously we were paying the highest paid salary for a dispatcher, right,
Yeah.
and benefits. So they had some turnover a couple of years, and that highest paid dispatcher may have come down.
what you'll see too is a lot of the dispatch facilities around the state, in order to comply with this, what they've gone to is a per call model. And they just take their total operations cost for dispatch. They take the different entities that are using dispatch, and then they divide the total cost of operating the center versus the total calls you get, and that gives you the cost per call. And then every entity pays for the number of calls that they have go through dispatch.
The costing model, as Joel has indicated, really varies greatly. The concern that I would have for us is twofold. Number one is the level of service we are receiving and the amount of money we are going to pay. If we are going to pay significantly more, which there may be a realistic need to do because the service level is problematic, then there should be total transparency in terms of how we are arriving at those particular numbers. And right now there is a lack of clarity in terms of what the budget is and what the separation between general fund allocations and what would be our municipal services piece. So it's a big deal. But the reason it is impactful is we have just expended a significant amount of money to upgrade to the 800 megahertz system, and it's wonderful for so many reasons. That system provides us a great deal of advantages, but remember, we're still reliant on the human and technological piece that is in that dispatch center, and if that is that remains, not upgraded, then the best radios in the world are only so good. There is a need to upgrade the fiber optic systems. There's a need to upgrade the CAD system. There's a whole bunch of subsystems, and we have been working with them to a great extent, spending a lot of time up to and include discussions with them about the potential of us leaving Grand County and going to price dispatch in an effort to spur a discussion about how we're going to move forward. But you guys are going to be we are in a unique circumstance because the fire district doesn't have a whole lot of money. EMS, doesn't have a whole lot of money. And by the way, if they tell the Park Service that they're suddenly going to get a big increase in billing, they could just split and go out of a regional dispatching center that's out of Page, Arizona. So there's all kinds of permutations. But, it's one of these issues that I think this year in particular is going to be very interesting. It's a non-containable cost.
And do you feel that we have, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, we're prepared for this? I mean, what would...
Yeah, so the answer to that is, and I'll get into this, there's a couple of looming needs in law enforcement, and we've spoken about this, Rachel and I and David, about the potential of looking at some contingency funds to do some kind of segregated fund balances for these kinds of potential emergencies. So my recommendation would be that, and Rachel's very well aware of these, that the city begin to look at these and say, look, we're gonna stash some cash in a couple of these little areas and maybe allow those to grow over the course of 2 or 3 years. Now, the benefit of doing that is that if, you know, they're fungible, they can be moved into a variety of particular areas.
Did you say fungible?
Fungible, they can be moved from
That's a
one.
word.
Used for other purposes.
I'm sorry, it's, they're movable.
But just,
No, I didn't know it's a word.
just to clarify, the stash of cash will actually be allocated towards like replacement funds for equipment. So it's
It'd be in a nice little line item.
yes.
Yes, yes.
But the reason I said is for the citizens' purposes, it would be, you know, people would look at it as an expense, when really it's an allocation and it would remain there unless needed. But why I mention that is we're kind of at the mercy of a couple of, you know, outside entities and some realities here. And so the risk is that if suddenly we got a bill, and I'm just going to throw a number out here, please don't anybody panic, but let's say we suddenly got a notification from the county that instead of $75,000, our dispatch bill would be $250,000. The only place we currently have to address that within our budget right now, and we're kind of lucky because we're operating with a little bit of underexpend, but that's why I would say leave the underexpend. But what we probably ought to do is to begin to build for that contingency, because it's coming.
And when that happens, is there the opportunity to in-house, or are we beholden to their bill?
You would be, you know, there's always political discussions that can take place and other, you know, approaches. But what I'm saying is those expenses are real. Right now, the state of dispatch is the way it is because it is underfunded and almost. You know, I'm sure the sheriff, and I don't want to speak for him, but if he had his way, he would do those upgrades and move along. They just have not moved into that model yet. So he's sitting on that as well. For instance, the current UCA recommendation / statutory requirement is that there are 2 dispatchers on duty at all times in that facility. That makes sense. He does, you know, they're having difficulty coming into compliance, but you can imagine if they go up to 2 dispatchers, that cost has to be absorbed by somebody. And right now, the county kind of is absorbing it all, and I don't think they will do that forever.
So what percentage of calls are city versus county calls?
This is a tremendous question. So here is another deficiency. The answer to your direct question is we don't know. And here is why. Grand County operates with a Spielman records management system that their dispatcher enters in specific data that can be outputted and captured in terms of a total number. We operate currently on TELUS, or what is called FatPot, and they are kind of hand entering some of our data, but it's not perfected. When we have asked to do an apples to oranges comparison, we've gotten into a significant argument over what is and isn't a call. So one of the things we have requested to do is, and there is a formulation of a committee where we set the definition right now about what is a call. Is it where an officer goes and writes a report? Or is it any time an officer uses his or her radio and communicates with dispatch? They're 2 very different models. Then the question has to be, how are we going to capture that? Because unless you have that kind of utilization data, the only other expense model you can use is a population basis. And to me, that's a little problematic because of all the tourists and all that stuff. Do you know what I mean? There's got to be a different model. So the technology that currently exists over there does not allow us to have that kind of empirical data to begin to look at these decisions. The only model that has been discussed so far is to simply say, okay, Grand County, isolate out your jail search and rescue and county sheriff costs.
And
right?
fire, because that's county as well.
And then
I mean,
take what we're using just for dispatch.
Well, but I mean, it's still kind of in the,
No, you're right, Mayor. In my opinion, the county,
I mean,
the
if we're
fire
putting
district.
EMS into, it's its own district, fire's its own district, what was the other
Citizens
one?
pay for that service independent.
Right,
Yes,
they're,
ma'am.
yeah,
So let's pretend that the sheriff's office goes through and they do an analysis and they'd say, okay, we know for sure it's $100 dispatch. And we look at it, we go, yeah, we agree it's $100 because it doesn't have jailers and it doesn't have, you know, all this other stuff. So it's $100. Now, the next question is of the $100, what's our piece? And by the way, if we're gonna pay, what's EMS's and what's fires and what's, you know, that kind of a thing. I think when you do that, first of all, it's a very good model because then it also gives us an ownership, because when we go over right now and ask for different upgrades or different, you know, we're not in an ownership model. If we're paying, even though we're paying the amount we're paying, where there is no mechanism for kind of board participation to talk about, you know, strengths and weaknesses of the dispatch center. And it's very fundamental to your safety here in this community. Very fundamental.
So has that metric been created where if it's when you touch your button on your mic or when it's a phone call, has that been established?
It has been, it has been discussed. The mechanism for them to actually do it has not. We had a very robust set of meetings with all of the people involved. In fact, we even included San Juan County in the conversations because one of the other suggestions that I made in that meeting was to look at creating a regional dispatch center, bringing San Juan up somewhere here in the valley. And just, if you want my honest opinion, just building a whole new kettle of fish. Because the growth you guys, you know, are gonna see over the next, hate to keep referring to you guys, it's terrible. The growth this community is going to see, you know, is going to be substantial. And San Juan has a
part of
big
that,
part
yeah.
to play in that. And same with emergency response, right? Because when there's people being hurt in the Spanish Valley, we all gotta go and vice versa.
yeah.
So, and to me, that's where you move forward and you go look like to John Curtis and others and the state legislature, and you say, we're having all of these huge impacts as it relates to tourism and all this other stuff. Here's what you can do for us. You can build us a nice big dispatch building.
Yeah.
With a new fiber optic in it, and at least then the capital costs are mitigated. And by the way, then we'll figure out the individual costing model amongst us with more partners.
Yeah, you know what a nice place to land for that facility would be? Is the, kind of the USU campus area.
That's a great idea.
Because it's in close proximity. If USU also has a program, it could feed in with programs.
And remember too, that is a
Centrally
really cool
located.
Emergency Operations Center
Hasn't
that
been
you
built.
need terribly as well. You know what I mean? That when something happens, you can all go up there and you got the PVs and the charts. And I'm not being facetious, but, and we even did some modeling for that. And I would be happy at a later date, because I am very passionate about that dispatching piece. And I know that, I'm gonna be frank here too, Brett's gonna be in a little bit of a difficult circumstance, as I am and have been, you know, the relationship piece. But y'all, it would be good to get educated about what those options are, because I think it is gonna be at your level that those conversations are moving forward. We went through this in Salt Lake hugely, and it's a big piece. Sorry, I know we're on budget.
Can I ask a question just
Yes,
really
of course.
quick? I attended an update last week from the Utah State Tax Commission, and they said that the 911 surcharge is going up, mainly due to the loss of landlines. So they're upping the overall rate to try and recapture that. And Grand County receives our 911 funds. Have you had any initial conversations with them about, just because that funding piece isn't represented here?
That's
That
right.
we're paying them $76,000 a year, but they're also receiving all of our
All of our-
911, which we didn't know until Jim discovered it after he got here, so.
And what is that to the tune of?
You're north of $180,000.
So they're getting 180 plus the 75?
But remember, those 911 surcharge revenues are specifically earmarked. You can't use them as a city for anything other than dispatch.
It has to be dispatch.
It used to be you had to use them only for equipment that was 911 related. The law got changed, you can now use it for a lot of things. But to your point exactly, with the new revenues coming in, there has not yet been a determination about how those revenues are going to be allocated. And to me, that's a good opportunity for communities like Moab to go in there and say either buy our end user radio equipment or help us with our capital costs for what is a true dispatch. You're probably one of 3 counties in the state that dispatches out of a jail. It's just not a common model.
Well, it's just time for us to get organized, so thank you so much.
So
for
can I just
the-
ask one follow-up question, or Mike has one too, I guess, to wrap it all together in my brain. So, so is price still one of the various options, partnering with them, or would that be too big of an area or a?
So the political piece
Yeah.
would be something like this. What you would
Yeah.
hear is some say, you shouldn't go to Price because they're not familiar with our area. And I would say bunk.
Yeah, we
because
already have some service overlap with accidents between.
not only
yeah.
that, but given GPS, and mapping, that's just a non-starter. But you will hear that trope, which I don't agree with in any way, shape, or form. One of the reasons I was so excited about going to the 800 system, it opens your options up to go anywhere you want. Because that system, I can put my walkie-talkie on this table right now, and I can speak to Salt Lake if I want to. And I can speak as clear as a bell to Richfield, I can clear as to Price, you name it. Now, the only way it works to go to Price is if EMS goes with you. Why? Because when people call 911, you do not want to call transfer for medical services. So the one area we're over a barrel with is, and I've had conversations with Andy about this, and you've probably heard some of these in the EMS board, and it's not to be mean, it really isn't. Our technology here is a little substandard because of our telecom provider. That's not the sheriff's fault, but the technology benefits and price are significantly better. But the question's got to be asked: what is more not only economical, but what is more operationally reasonable? So your options have greatly increased, but there's always going to be this political component about, why is Moab going somewhere else? Well, what you're doing is you're going to a dispatch center that potentially, already has the multiple. They are UCA adherent. They meet all of the standards for the Utah Communications Authority.
I assume we'll be coming back to this with both of you, and but just so I understand, as a council member, like moving forward, and as someone who's on the EMS board, do you guys have a sense, like, is the next logical thing that happens is that mainly the city and county get together, or all these other players, EMS and search and rescue and everybody, to discuss and lay out our various options, and then that staff that does that reports back to the council, or the council should be, a representative or whatever, or just the city manager should be in on some of those meetings. I'm just trying to get a picture in my head of
I'm
what
very happy you
needs to
mentioned
happen
that.
next. Yeah.
Brett has been with me side by side in all of these discussions and presentations, and the next critical logical step, in my opinion, is the formation of a dispatch administrative board, where decision makers from the respective entities sit down and ask the very first and most important question: what is the budget of the dispatch today? And then what is going to be the allocation model that we're going to do? Because the way most dispatch centers do it now is they have people like yourselves, elected city managers, et cetera, that sit as an executive board, right, and make budget decisions just like you're all doing right now. Then you put Brett and the sheriff and Andy and others on an operations board that comes to that board on a regular, just like this, and says, gee, we really would like some new gizmos. And you all say, well, we don't have the money, or you do or you don't. But right now, remember, and I'm going to say it right now, that's completely encapsulated in the county council. And from my standpoint, the county sheriff's budget relating to the dispatch is a little opaque, because there are, and this is by no fault, it's historic. So I'm not bad-mouthing him in any way, shape, or form, but, so that's really important.
Well, it sounds like maybe they, this would help them out.
Yes.
So
Happy to send you the presentations we did in Price. Brett also can walk you through that. This model
Well, here's the deal. It's 1:36, and this was a lot of really awesome information. I feel like every time I hear you talk about items, I get so well informed about the topic. I'm so excited that Brett has had you for the time that he has to be able to get conversations like this and have this deeper knowledge. So thank you for mentoring us and Brett. I'm gonna call us done here just because of the time. and because of our need to move forward. Unless there are any other questions from this council about any other budget items of concern. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. We'll see you tonight after 7 p.m. for a little moment. Very excited. Bye. David's not here, so I think a motion to adjourn, and we'll do sewer later. Recess?
Stormwater.
Oh, motion to recess. What did I say?
Say stormwater.
So I screwed up both. So a motion to recess and stormwater, we can move to another budget slot.
I move that we recess until 5 p.m. and we'll be discussing stormwater later tonight.
Thanks, Ronnie.
Oh, second.
Thank you, Karen.
Second, yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are in
5
recess.
PM here.
Yes.